Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring more stories like this to you.
Welcome to Pleasant Valley. Easy does it, Mom, Emily cautioned, her voice a steadying presence in the chaos of the move. Sarah clutched the railing, each foot placement deliberate. Her injured leg, a bitter souvenir from Kandahar, throbbed a persistent counterpoint to the day's activity. Those 3 steps felt like scaling a cliff face. "I'm all right, Em," Sarah gasped, her breathing shallow. "Just a moment." She paused, her grip tight on the cool metal. The sweet fragrance of freshly mown lawns permeated the air, a welcome change from the clinical odors of the assisted living facility. Emily swallowed a sharp reply. Her mother's stubborn self-reliance was as ingrained as the medal on her dresser. "Let me call that ramp company again. They promised delivery this week." "No ramps yet," Sarah stated, her gaze drifting over the immaculate lawns opposite. Cascading petunias overflowed from hanging planters, not a single blade dared to defy its regimented place. "Let's try fitting in first, shall we?" Emily sighed, smoothing her meticulously styled hair. "Mom, conformity isn't exactly in your DNA." She understood the yearning for normalcy, but denial wasn't the answer. "This is meant to simplify your life, not complicate it." "And it will," Sarah insisted, finally gaining the porch. A spark of her old resolve glinted in her eyes. "Imagine the garden I can cultivate, room for Buster to roam. An end to shared meals and those dreadful bingo nights." Buster, her loyal golden retriever, whined softly from the truck. Sensing her distress, Emily gave her mother's hand a squeeze. "Exactly. A clean slate. No more compromises." She surveyed the tranquil street, a picture of suburban bliss. "This is Pleasant Valley, Mom, safe, peaceful, ideal." She needed it to be a sanctuary, a refuge from the aggressive world of corporate law where she thrived. A place where her mother could find some peace inside. The house possessed the nostalgic aroma of aged wood and sunshine. Emily had painted the walls a cheerful yellow, replacing the outdated wallpaper with contemporary prints smaller than their previous home. It felt intimate and manageable. The movers began the task of emptying the truck, their muffled shouts echoing in the unfamiliar space. Sarah sank into an armchair by the window, observing the proceedings with a discerning eye. "That sofa is rather bold, don't you think?" she remarked, eyeing the lively teal velvet Emily had chosen. "It's uplifting," Emily countered, smiling. "Like you're going to be." She knelt beside her mother, taking her hand. "I know it's a big transition, but you're going to love it. I promise." Unseen, from behind the lace-trimmed window across the way, a sharp pair of eyes monitored the scene. Karen Livingston, president of the Pleasant Valley Homeowners Association, meticulously jotted down observations in a slim, leather notebook. Moving van, minor damage, upholstery, questionable choice, resident, apparent mobility challenges. She tapped her pen against her chin, a crease marring her carefully maintained forehead. The HOA's dedication to impeccable curb appeal was unwavering. This new arrival warranted close scrutiny. Inside, Emily was already orchestrating the movers, directing them with the precision of a seasoned commander. She was a dynamo, Sarah reflected, a whirlwind of competence and drive. She'd come so far. From the quiet child who'd trailed her around the army base to the formidable attorney who commanded respect. At times, Sarah wondered if she deserved such a remarkable daughter. The doorbell chimed, startling Sarah before she could react. Emily was already at the door, a practiced smile gracing her lips. A tall, impeccably dressed woman stood on the porch, holding a casserole dish cocooned in plastic. "Welcome to Pleasant Valley," she chirped, her voice a touch too buoyant, a touch too warm. "I'm Karen Livingston, your neighbor across the street. I thought you might appreciate a little sustenance after such a long day." Emily accepted the dish with a courteous incline of her head. "How kind, thank you, Mrs. Livingston." "Karen, please," the woman insisted, her smile unwavering. "And don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything at all. We're a very tight-knit community here in Pleasant Valley. We look after one another." Sarah watched from the living room, a flicker of apprehension stirring within her. The woman's smile seemed forced, her gaze a little too probing. Perhaps Pleasant Valley wasn't quite the utopia Emily imagined. Perhaps it was a little too perfect for its own good, the aesthetic mandate. The Pleasant Valley Community Center buzzed with the drone of fluorescent tubes, their stark light bleaching the rows of folding chairs. Karen Livingston, HOA president, punctuated the silence with the tap-tap-tap of a perfectly filed nail against her agenda, her laser focus scanning the assembled homeowners. Beside her, Harold Jenkins perched nervously, adjusting his spectacles. He anticipated the coming storm. "All right," Karen announced, her tone sharp and commanding. "Let's address the recent breaches of our community covenants." A wave of subdued sighs swept through the room. Harold winced, regretting his forgotten stress ball. "First, the Elm Street Garden Gnome incident," Karen stated, a moue of distaste twisting her lips. 3 gnomes. 3. And 1 was angling. In a decorative puddle, utterly unacceptable. From the rear, Mrs. Gable tentatively offered, but Karen, they added such a whimsical touch. My grandchildren adored them. Karen's smile remained purely cosmetic. Whimsy is subjective, Mrs. Gable. A conformity, however, is not. HOA regulations clearly stipulate exterior decor must preserve a unified appearance and enhance property values. She navigated the hefty binder with practiced dexterity, her finger landing precisely on the relevant clause. Gnomes, in their very essence, defy unification. Harold bobbed his head with gusto, eager to demonstrate his allegiance. Precisely, Karen, harmonization is paramount. We can't allow things to become chaotic. Karen leveled a chilly glare in his direction. Exactly, Harold, thank you. Turning back to the room, she continued, the Sanchez family on Oak Avenue has elected a contentious shade of beige for their exterior trim. Desert sunset, they call it. I consider it an affront. A low murmur of assent rippled through the assembly. Beige was a given. Desert sunset reeked of recklessness. Our approved spectrum encompasses 27 exquisite variations of beige, cream, and off-white, Karen elaborated, her voice dripping with disapproval. There is simply no justification for such flagrant disregard for our community's visual harmony. Harold cleared his throat meekly. Perhaps a gentle reminder, he ventured. Karen impaled him with a steely gaze. A reminder, Harold, we dispatched 3 letters, 2 emails, and a rather pointed postcard showcasing an especially garish, mismatched McMansion. The era of gentle reminders has passed. Harold shrunk back in his seat, crestfallen. He hadn't grasped the extent of the escalation, preoccupied as he was with selecting the most aesthetically pleasing fertilizer brand. The Sanchez family has 14 days to rectify their paint selection, Karen declared. Non-compliance will incur a fine of $500, and the HOA will commission a professional repaint at their expense. A collective gasp rippled through the room. $500, the authority Karen wielded was daunting, yet, Harold conceded, undeniably impressive. He respected her unwavering resolve, even when he struggled to fully grasp its nuances. Now, I realize some may deem these standards stringent, Karen conceded, her voice taking on a softer timbre. But I assure you, they serve a vital purpose. A cohesive neighborhood visage translates to elevated property values. Higher property values translate to a more flourishing community for each and every one of us. She paused for dramatic effect, allowing her words to resonate. The promise of increased net worth was a potent persuader. We are not merely maintaining facades, Karen concluded, her voice ringing with conviction. We are safeguarding your assets. We are securing the future of Pleasant Valley. Harold applauded with gusto, his enthusiasm bordering on excessive. Several heads swiveled in his direction. He swiftly lowered his hands, a hot flush rising on his neck. He merely sought to be agreeable, to avert any discord. Karen articulated everything with such clarity, such order. He lacked the motivation to challenge her reasoning, to formulate independent opinions. It was simpler, safer, to simply concur. As the meeting dissolved, Harold shadowed Karen, gathering discarded documents and realigning chairs. You managed that masterfully, Karen, he whispered, admiration coloring his tone. The Sanchez family is certain to recognize the error of their judgment now. Karen rewarded him with a genuine smile. Thank you, Harold. It's reassuring to have a board member who appreciates the gravity of our mission. She patted his arm reassuringly. Now, regarding the petunias on Maple Drive. I suspect they lean a bit too aggressively toward magenta. A memorandum might be warranted? Harold nodded with alacrity. Certainly, Karen. A memorandum it shall be. As they exited the community center, Harold felt a renewed sense of purpose. He might not be the one in charge, but he was contributing his part. He was instrumental in upholding the neighborhood's appeal, protecting investments, and securing Pleasant Valley's destiny. And, most importantly, he was pleasing Karen that, in its own right, felt like a triumph. A ramp in the backyard. Sarah traced the outline of her back door with a stubby pencil on a worn piece of graph paper. The concrete step had become a Everest she couldn't conquer some days. A ramp. That was the answer, not a fancy one, just a sturdy, reliable slope to bridge the gap between her house and the freedom of her own backyard. She'd resisted the idea for months, loathing the thought of needing it. Independence had always been her shield, her badge of honor earned during years of service, but the pain in her knees was a relentless enemy, chipping away at her resolve. Her daughter, Emily, had suggested it gently, patiently, and Sarah finally relented, not for herself, but for Emily's peace of mind. The design took shape slowly. Sarah consulted online guides, sketching and erasing, factoring in the angle, the width, the materials. She wanted something that blended with the existing patio, nothing garish or attention-grabbing. Redwood, she decided, for its durability and natural beauty. It would weather to a soft grey over time, mirroring the color of the house. She found a local handyman, a quiet man named Ben who ran his business out of a battered pickup truck. He arrived on time, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. Sarah showed him her sketches, explaining her needs, her voice firm but laced with a hint of apology. "Just need a little help getting around," she said, gesturing towards the step. Ben studied the plans, nodding. "Looks good and solid. I can start tomorrow, weather permitting." The rhythmic thump of the hammer and the whine of the saw filled the afternoon air. Sarah sat on her porch swing, watching Ben work, a mug of lukewarm tea in her hands. The smell of freshly cut redwood was intoxicating, a reminder of simpler times spent camping in the redwood forests of Northern California. As the ramp took shape, Sarah felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in months. It wasn't just about the physical ease it would provide. It was about reclaiming a part of herself. She thought she had lost. The backyard, once a source of frustration, was becoming accessible again, a place where she could tend her roses, watch the birds flit among the branches of the old oak tree, and simply breathe. Across the manicured lawn, Karen Livingston, HOA president, clipped deadheads off her prize-winning hydrangeas. The sound of construction grated on her nerves. She'd specifically chosen this neighborhood for its pristine uniformity, its unwavering commitment to aesthetic harmony. She glanced toward Sarah's house, a frown etching itself onto her perfectly botoxed forehead. At first, she couldn't quite make out what was happening. Then, as she straightened, pulling off her gardening gloves, she saw it, a wooden structure snaking its way from Sarah's back door down to the patio. A ramp. Karen's jaw tightened. A ramp. Here, in her neighborhood, she marched closer to the property line, her high-heeled sandals sinking slightly into the plush, meticulously maintained grass. The redwood gleamed in the afternoon sun, undeniably well-crafted, but utterly, unforgivably out of place. "Unbelievable," she muttered under her breath, her eyes narrowing. It clashed. It screamed, different. It was an affront to the carefully curated image of perfection she had worked so hard to maintain. She saw Sarah sitting on the porch swing, a serene smile on her face, apparently oblivious to the visual assault she was inflicting on the community. Karen's hand instinctively reached for her phone. This would not stand. Some things were simply non-negotiable, and architectural conformity was one of them. A strongly worded email, she decided, was in order, followed by a formal notice, and if necessary, a hearing. The battle lines, though invisible, had been drawn. A ramp, built with hope and determination, had inadvertently declared war. The warning letter. The sun blazed on Karen's meticulously styled hair as her golf cart zipped along Primrose Lane. Emerald lawns became a blur of green, each precisely sculpted shrub. A credit to her watchful eye as head of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. She scanned the landscape, a hawk on the hunt for deviations, an audacious weed challenging the monoculture, a forgotten refuse bin, a tattered flag snapping with disrespect. Then she spotted it. The ramp. It jutted from Sarah Walker's porch, an ungainly protuberance on her otherwise perfect suburban canvas, unfinished lumber, devoid of any aesthetic consideration. A jarring eyesore, a flagrant violation of Willow Creek's carefully curated image. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. She scribbled a note on her clipboard, the pen scratching a harsh sound amidst the birdsong. Later, Sarah Walker collected her mail. A stack of bills, the usual junk, and a cream-colored envelope bearing the Willow Creek HOA crest, embossed in gold. Her brow creased. Correspondence from them was rare. Inside, a starkly impersonal message was typed on a single sheet. To the resident of 14 Oak Street. This letter concerns potential infractions of the Willow Creek HOA covenants, specifically, Section 3, Subsection B, regarding external modifications and adherence to community aesthetic standards, may apply to recent alterations observed at the aforementioned address. Residents are encouraged to review governing documents for compliance. The Architectural Review Committee may require further action. Asterisk. Sarah reread it, a puzzled frown deepening. External modifications, aesthetic standards. What could they mean? She glanced at her window boxes, overflowing with bright blooms. Had she chosen an unacceptable mulch color? It couldn't be the ramp, could it? Surely, they wouldn't object to something essential for her mobility. A wave of unease washed over her. Emily arrived late Friday, bringing with her the tang of city air. Pizza delivery, Mom, she announced, brandishing a box from Sarah's favorite place. Sarah offered a weary smile. You shouldn't have. Nonsense. I wanted to, and Emily added, setting down her briefcase, I need a dose of small-town serenity before diving back into the urban jungle. As Sarah cleared the table after dinner, Emily's gaze fell on the cream envelope. What's this? Sarah shrugged. Just some nonsense from the HOA. I can't even decipher it. Emily scanned the letter, her expression sharpened. This is no mere trifle, Mom. It's a thinly disguised threat. She reread it, slowly, deliberately. Section 3, Subsection B, External Modifications, Aesthetic Standards. She fixed Sarah with a pointed look. It's about the ramp, isn't it? Sarah's shoulders sagged. I suppose so. I just don't understand their problem. It's not harming anyone. They object because it clashes with their vision of neighborhood perfection, Emily stated, her voice simmering with anger. This is preposterous. She raked a hand through her hair, her mind already churning. We have to challenge this, Mom. Challenge it, how? Sarah asked, her voice tinged with worry. First, a request for exemption, Emily declared, her voice decisive. On grounds of medical necessity and the Americans with Disabilities Act. We'll make it clear that denial constitutes discrimination and would be a public relations disaster for them. I don't know, Emily, Sarah hesitated. I don't want to stir things up. Emily knelt, taking her mother's hand. Mom, you're not making waves. You're simply asserting your needs, and I won't let them push you around. Her gaze hardened, a steely glint reflecting her resolve. This isn't just about a ramp, Mom. It's about your right to live comfortably and independently in your own home. Exemption denied. Emily's fingers flew across the keyboard, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap a counterpoint to the anxious flutter in Sarah's chest. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and highlighting the grim determination etched on Emily's face. The official ADA exemption request was Emily's masterpiece, a precisely worded document citing chapter and verse, medical records attached, every I dotted and T, crossed with laser-like precision. It was as formidable as Emily herself. Think this will do the trick? Sarah asked, nervously fiddling with the hem of her t-shirt. Emily stopped typing, swiveled in her chair, and fixed Sarah with a look. It's legally airtight, Sarah. If they deny this, they're opening themselves up to a world of trouble. She printed 2 copies, the printer whirring its mechanical song of impending confrontation. 1 copy she slid across the table to Sarah. Keep that to document everything. Okay, dates, times, who said what. The HOA meeting room smelled faintly of stale coffee and desperation. Sarah sat beside Emily, the exemption request clutched in her lap like a shield. Karen Livingston, perched at the head of the long table, surveyed the room with the air of a queen holding court. Harold Jenkins, the perpetually flustered board member, sat to her right, nervously adjusting his tie. All right, Karen began, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. We're here to discuss the modification made to the Walker property. She said modification as if it were a particularly distasteful curse word. Emily stood. It's a ramp, Karen, and we've submitted a formal request for exemption based on the Americans with Disabilities Act. She placed a copy of the request on the table, the crisp paper a stark contrast to the worn surface. Karen picked it up gingerly, as if afraid it might contaminate her. Yes, well, we've reviewed it, and while we sympathize with Mrs. Walker's situation. She paused, searching for a less offensive word. The board has some concerns. Harold Jenkins cleared his throat. Aesthetic concerns, primarily the ramp. It's rather visible. Emily leveled a gaze at Harold that could curdle milk. Visibility is kind of the point. Harold. It allows Sarah to leave the house. Now, Emily, Karen interjected, her voice laced with artificial sweetness. We have to consider the impact on property values. Willow Creek is a highly desirable community. People pay a premium to live here. A ramp, it might deter potential buyers. Sarah felt a surge of anger. So my ability to live a normal life is less important than your precious property values? Karen's smile tightened. It's about maintaining the integrity of the community, Sarah. We have to consider the greater good. Emily leaned forward, her voice low and dangerous. The greater good that doesn't trump federal law, Karen. Denying this exemption is discriminatory, plain and simple. Karen waved a dismissive hand. We're not denying her anything. We're simply requesting that she explore alternative solutions, perhaps a less obtrusive design, something that blends in better with the landscaping. There is no alternative that allows me to safely and independently leave my home, Sarah stated, her voice trembling slightly. This ramp is not a matter of aesthetics, it's a matter of accessibility. Karen turned to Harold. Harold, have you anything to add? Harold, trapped between Karen's steely gaze and Emily's simmering fury, stammered, I think Karen's made some very valid points. Karen beamed. Thank you, Harold. All right then, all in favor of denying the exemption request? She raised her hand. Harold, with a pained expression, reluctantly followed suit. Exemption denied, Karen declared, her voice triumphant. Emily stood up, gathering her things. You've made a mistake, Karen. A very big mistake. Sarah, her heart sinking, followed Emily out of the room. The stale coffee smell clung to her clothes, a bitter reminder of the injustice she had just witnessed. Outside, the setting sun cast long, ominous shadows across the manicured lawns of Willow Creek, turning the pristine landscape into a stage for a looming battle, the ramp's removal. The rhythmic thwack of the sledgehammer echoed across Willow Creek, muffled only slightly by the morning mist. Karen Livingston watched, arms crossed, as the burly contractor, a man named Bruno with a perpetually suspicious squint, swung again. Splintered wood flew, landing on the neatly manicured lawn that Sarah Walker had so diligently maintained until the ramp. Discreet, Bruno, discreet, Karen reminded him, her voice tight with controlled urgency. I don't want a spectacle. Bruno grunted, spitting a stream of tobacco juice into the bed of petunias that bordered Sarah's house. Karen winced. Just get it done, she snapped, adjusting the Hermes scarf at her throat. The scarf felt suddenly constricting. Inside Karen's own pristine kitchen, Harold Jenkins wrung his hands, his face a roadmap of anxiety. He'd pleaded with Karen last night, argued that they should at least wait until Sarah returned from her daughters. He'd even stammered something about the Americans with Disabilities Act. Karen had simply stared him down, her blue eyes glacial. Harold, property values are at stake. We have a duty to uphold the standards of this community, and frankly, that thing was an eyesore. Now, peeking through his own blinds, Harold saw the skeletal remains of the ramp being loaded onto Bruno's flatbed truck. A pang of guilt, sharp and unexpected, pierced his chest. He knew Sarah, a quiet, friendly woman who always waved when he passed. He'd even admired her vegetable garden. To do this behind her back, Karen, he began. Turning from the window. He felt a desperate need to say something anything. Karen cut him off with a dismissive wave. Don't start, Harold. It's done now. Let's focus on the landscaping. I've already spoken to Mrs. Henderson next door. She's agreed to let us borrow some of her azaleas to fill in the bare patch. Harold deflated. He was a leaf in Karen's hurricane, tossed and turned according to her whims. He mumbled something about needing more coffee and retreated to the kitchen. The image of splintered wood and a desolate flowerbed burned into his mind. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Willow Creek when Sarah Walker's taxi pulled up to her curb. She paid the driver, a small smile playing on her lips. She'd enjoyed her visit with Emily and the grandkids. A brief escape from the everyday battles. She reached for her suitcase, a worn leather affair, and started towards her door, but something was wrong, terribly wrong. The familiar slope, the solid, dependable structure that had allowed her to navigate her own backyard with dignity, was gone. Vanished. In its place was a raw patch of earth, the freshly turned soil still damp with the morning's mist. Sarah stood frozen, her suitcase slipping from her grasp, landing with a dull thud on the walkway. Her breath caught in her throat. Disbelief turned to confusion, then to a searing wave of anger that threatened to consume her. She hobbled forward, her walking stick Sinking into the soft earth, the petunias, trampled and broken, lay scattered like discarded toys. The azaleas from Mrs. Henderson's yard looked jarringly out of place, as if planted in haste to cover up a crime. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the already distorted scene. It wasn't just a ramp. It was her independence, her freedom, her connection to the garden she loved. It was a deliberate act of cruelty, a blatant disregard for her humanity. She leaned heavily on her walking stick, her knuckles white. A low sob escaped her lips, a sound that echoed the emptiness she felt inside. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a vibrant spectacle that seemed to mock her desolation. This wasn't just about aesthetics anymore. This was a declaration of war. A war she didn't start, but one she was now determined to win, fueling the fire. Sarah sat slumped in her wheelchair, the unopened mail scattered around her like fallen leaves. Her face was blotchy, tears having carved paths through the carefully applied makeup. The official notice from the Pleasant Valley HOA trembled in her hand. Emily knelt beside her, gently taking the paper. The sterile language leaped out: violation, non-compliance, removal order, all centered on the ramp. "They can't do this, Emily," Sarah choked out, her voice thick with suppressed sobs. "I just got back. I finally felt like I could manage." Emily's jaw tightened. The controlled anger that simmered beneath her calm exterior began to bubble. She smoothed her mother's hand, her touch firm and reassuring. "They won't do this, Mom. I promise you, this is blatant discrimination, and we're going to fight it." The fire in Emily's eyes was a stark contrast to her composed demeanor. She was a coiled spring, ready to unleash. Sarah looked at her daughter, a flicker of hope igniting in the depths of her despair. Emily had always been her rock, her advocate. "Where do I start?" Emily murmured, more to herself than to her mother. "There has to be a pattern here. They can't just be targeting you." The next morning, Emily's home office transformed into a war room. Stacks of legal pads, color-coded sticky notes, and printouts from the county records office covered every surface. She started by combing through the HOA's bylaws, highlighting inconsistencies and vaguely worded clauses. Then, she delved into public records, searching for past lawsuits, complaints filed with the state, and any hint of financial irregularities. Hours blurred into a relentless pursuit of information. Emily discovered a series of questionable expenditures, landscaping contracts awarded to companies with ties to board members, and suspiciously low property assessments for certain homes. She felt a surge of grim satisfaction. This was more than just a ramp issue. This was systemic. A name kept popping up: Karen Livingston. HOA president. Emily found Livingston's name attached to several controversial decisions, each one seemingly designed to benefit her personally or financially. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. This woman was dangerous. The next day, Emily drove to a modest home on the other side of Pleasant Valley. The lawn was meticulously manicured, but the paint on the window trim was peeling, and the porch sagged slightly. She found Maria Rodriguez tending a small vegetable garden in the backyard. Maria straightened up, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. Her face was etched with worry, but her eyes held a spark of quiet strength. "Senorita Walker, thank you for coming." Emily introduced herself, offering a warm smile. "My mother, Sarah Walker, lives a few streets over. I understand you've also had some difficulties with the HOA." Maria hesitated, glancing nervously at the surrounding houses. "The HOA. They are powerful. It is not good to make enemies." "I understand your concerns, Maria," Emily said gently. "But they can't keep getting away with this. My mother is disabled, and they're trying to take away her independence. If they've done this to you, and to her, who else are they targeting?" Maria's gaze dropped to the worn soil. "They fined me for having a small shed in the backyard. My son, Miguel, he needs a place to store his bicycle and his tools. It's not hurting anyone." "Was it a violation of the bylaws?" Emily asked, already knowing the answer. Maria shook her head. "No. The bylaws say sheds are allowed, as long as they are under a certain size and painted to match the house. Mine met the requirements, but they said it was an eyesore and demanded I remove it or pay a large fine." Emily pressed further, listening intently as Maria recounted other instances of the HOA's arbitrary enforcement of rules, seemingly targeted at low-income residents or those who didn't fit their ideal of community standards. Maria spoke of intimidation tactics, late fees tacked onto bills without explanation, and veiled threats against her family. "I am afraid for Miguel," Maria confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "He works hard, goes to school. I don't want him to be punished because of me." Emily reached out and squeezed Maria's hand. They won't punish him, Maria. I promise you. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop them. A steely glint returned to her eyes. Thank you for telling me your story. It's going to make a difference. As Emily drove away, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her mother's ramp anymore. It was about justice, about protecting the vulnerable from those who abused their power. The fire had been stoked, and it was burning brighter than ever. Karen Livingston and the Pleasant Valley HOA had no idea what was coming. The class action. The fluorescent hum of the county clerk's office was a familiar comfort. Emily scanned microfiche records, the spidery script blurring before her eyes until she focused. She was hunting for whispers of past lawsuits against Pleasant Valley estates, anything that might corroborate Sarah's story and strengthen her case. Hours bled into a dull ache in her neck until, finally, she found it. A faded newspaper article from 7 years ago detailing a settlement for ADA violations. The HOA had refused to accommodate a resident with mobility issues, denying her request for a designated parking space near her unit. A cold satisfaction settled in Emily's stomach. This wasn't an isolated incident. Karen Livingston's iron grip on the HOA had a history of trampling on the vulnerable. She dug deeper, cross-referencing meeting minutes and financial statements, uncovering discrepancies that reeked of mismanagement. Contracts awarded to Karen's brother-in-law for landscaping services at inflated prices. Unexplained expenditures disguised as community improvements. The rot was deeper than she imagined. The next step was rallying the troops. Emily organized a meeting at the local community center, sending out discreet emails with the subject line, Pleasant Valley residents, important information. She expected a handful of disgruntled homeowners. She was wrong. The room was packed, a sea of faces etched with frustration and resentment. Maria Rodriguez was there, clutching a photo of the small shed she'd erected in her backyard to store gardening tools. They sent me a violation notice, she said, her voice trembling, said it doesn't comply with the aesthetic guidelines, but it's my yard. What right do they have? An older man named George chimed in. They threatened to fine me for having my Christmas lights up a week past the deadline. A week, they're nitpicking us to death. Emily listened, her mind cataloguing each grievance, each instance of overreach and blatant abuse of power. She presented her findings, the ADA violation, the financial irregularities. A murmur of outrage rippled through the room. This isn't just about Sarah's ramp anymore, Emily said, her voice amplified by the microphone. This is about holding the HOA accountable for their actions. This is about protecting our rights as homeowners. Harold Jenkins sat near the back, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. Emily noticed him, his discomfort radiating like a physical force. She knew he was on the HOA board, Karen's loyal follower. He avoided her gaze, fidgeting with his hands. I didn't know about all this, Harold stammered, his voice barely audible. Karen. She always said she was acting in the best interests of the community. The best interests? Maria scoffed. Or her own interests? Harold looked down, guilt etched on his face. Emily decided to press him later. He was a weak link, and she needed him to break. The meeting ended with a palpable sense of unity. Emily collected names, addresses, documented evidence. The collective anger was a powerful fuel. Back in her meticulously organized home office, Emily drafted the class action lawsuit. The allegations were stark and uncompromising. Discrimination against disabled residents, ADA violations, breach of fiduciary duty, financial mismanagement, and abuse of power. The list went on, each point meticulously backed by evidence. She paused, rereading the document. It was a declaration of war. The next morning, Emily stood at the counter of the county courthouse, the thick stack of legal documents heavy in her arms. She watched as the clerk stamped the paperwork with a resounding thud. The action was filed and the lawsuit was initiated. As she walked out into the sunlight, Emily felt a surge of adrenaline. This was just the beginning. The fight would be long and arduous. Karen Livingston wouldn't go down without a fight, but Emily was ready. She had the evidence, the support of the community, and the unwavering determination to see justice served. Pleasant Valley was about to become a battleground. The war against Karen Livingston and her cronies had officially begun. Justice served. Sarah wheeled herself down the newly rebuilt ramp, the scent of freshly cut cedar filling her nostrils. The crisp morning air, a stark contrast to the humid tropical breeze she'd grown accustomed to during her rehabilitation trip, kissed her face. She reached the bottom and paused, her gaze sweeping over the riot of colors in her garden. Emily had outdone herself. Roses, vibrant and fragrant, climbed the trellis, and sunflowers, their faces turned towards the sun, stood tall and proud. A lump formed in Sarah's throat. This was home, this was freedom. The memory of the gut-wrenching discovery of the ramp's destruction felt distant now, like a bad dream fading with the sunrise. That dream, however, had morphed into a media frenzy. Emily had unleashed the hounds, and the HOA's dirty laundry was now airing on every news channel from CNN to the local 6 o'clock broadcast. HOA rampage, disabled veteran targeted, screamed one headline. Neighborhood bullies face legal reckoning, declared another. The internet was ablaze with outrage, fueled by Sarah's story and the countless others Emily had unearthed. Maria Rodriguez's forced removal of her vibrant, culturally significant yard decorations became a rallying cry for artistic freedom. The hashtag #HOAHell was trending worldwide. Karen Livingston, once a figure of petty authority, was now a pariah. Emily watched with grim satisfaction as the news footage showed Karen stumbling over her words during a press conference, her carefully crafted facade of benevolent leadership crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. Harold Jenkins, looking pale and perpetually nervous, stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the ground. Emily had subpoenaed every email, every financial record, every meeting minute. The evidence was damning. And inflated landscaping contracts, questionable vendor agreements, and blatant favoritism towards board members were all laid bare for the world to see. Inside the courtroom, Karen sat stiffly, her usual confidence replaced with a palpable anxiety. Harold avoided eye contact, fiddling with his tie. Emily, calm and collected, presented her case with surgical precision. She introduced witness after witness, each recounting stories of intimidation, harassment, and financial exploitation at the hands of the HOA. Maria Rodriguez, her voice trembling with emotion, spoke of the cultural heritage the HOA had tried to erase. Other homeowners echoed her sentiments, describing arbitrary rules, selective enforcement, and a general atmosphere of fear. Then it was Sarah's turn. As she wheeled herself to the witness stand, a hush fell over the courtroom. She spoke simply and directly, her voice unwavering. She described the independence the ramp had given her, the devastation of its destruction, and the principle at stake, the right to live with dignity and respect. Karen's lawyer attempted a weak cross-examination, trying to paint Sarah as a troublemaker, but Emily swiftly shut him down, citing relevant laws and precedents with laser-like accuracy. The judge, a stern woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, listened intently, taking copious notes. After a brief recess, she returned to deliver her verdict. Her words were clear and decisive. The HOA was found guilty of discrimination, harassment, and abuse of power. The court ordered the immediate reinstatement of Sarah's ramp, compensation for damages, and mandatory sensitivity training for all HOA board members. Furthermore, the court ruled that the HOA was to be dissolved, its authority transferred to a newly formed homeowners association operating under revised bylaws designed to ensure transparency, fairness, and respect for individual rights. A collective sigh of relief swept through the courtroom. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand, a silent thank you passing between them. Maria Rodriguez wept openly, embracing her neighbor, back in her garden. Sarah took a deep breath, the scent of roses filling her lungs. A robin landed on the edge of her rebuilt birdbath, chirping merrily. The sun warmed her skin, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. She watched a butterfly, its wings a kaleidoscope of colors, flit from flower to flower. It was a small thing, but it represented something profound: freedom, justice, and the quiet beauty of a life reclaimed. The battle had been hard-fought, but the victory was sweet. She wasn't just a disabled veteran anymore. She was a symbol. A symbol of resilience, of hope, and of the power of one person to stand up against injustice and win.